additional parking, but you could build the sewage treatment plant under and disguise it that you would not even be able to notice it. You could not do that on the other side because of all the rocks you would have to dig to be able to clear that area. So that is by way of passing in terms of where we were going with our development plans. But looking at GPH and SLASPA, we were satisfied. And I think back in the day when Sir John established SLASPA, it was designed in a particular manner where the Ministry of Finance controls the financial aspect of SLASPA, and you had the operational side of it being managed by the Ministry of Infrastructure and Ports. At the time, it used to be Ministry of Communications, Works, Transport, and Public Utilities. So these were the mechanisms. What we found was that, and as the political leader indicated, was that what GPH brought to the table, we found that SLASPA could have done the same thing and had been doing it successfully for many years. In fact, I can take you back, Mr. Montu, to the time when we were in government between 2006 and 2011. We were looking to increase cargo into St. Lucia. We saw St. Lucia as a good location for a transshipment if you're coming from Panama across to going up further north, that St. Lucia could be used. So we went we met with Dubai Ports World. We negotiated. We went through a process of discussion. And DP World at the time offered to invest $40 million to increase the cargo that was coming into Port Castries. And I said to DP World, well, SLASPA is already making $10 million a year. So what is it you bring into the table? If you're spending $40 or $50 million, that is St. Lucia's money in 5 years you would be spending. So what's the added value? Which is what the leader of the opposition is raising with GPH. What is the added value? And then when we went through the numbers, I said to them, look here, they were proposing a 70-30 arrangement. So 70% of the revenue would be theirs and 30% would be St. Lucia for spending $40 million. And it is strange that back in 2006 and now we're still looking at $40 million expenditure again. But I want our viewers and listeners to understand. We said to DP World, we can make an arrangement with you for 70-30, but St. Lucia gets to keep its $10 million that we are already earning, and any additional business you bring in, then it can be split 70-30. But for you to come and tell me 70-30 for what we already have, a deep water harbor, any size ship can come in, you are not bringing added value to the table really. So that was one. And when I look at what DP World has done, so we look at SLASPA and its ability to manage our ports, both our cargo and our cruise. And then we were proposing to develop the cargo port in Cul-de-Sac, which would make it a lot easier for SLASPA to manage there just as a cruise destination in Port Castries, because they would not have to contend with containers and cargo ships coming in. And what we found was GPH investment in Antigua is over $83 million US. In Bahamas, they spent about $250 million US for 49% of the ports in Bahamas. So they don't even have the controlling percentage. The government has an entity, I would say like a SLASPA, that also have a 49% share, and there is another entity with 2% shares in the arrangement in the Bahamas. So that is why we have been asking. Now we are left to speculate because the government of today refuse to disclose any of the arrangements that they have with global ports. So it is a situation where we have a responsibility. We are giving up over 400 million US dollars of revenue over the next 40 years, and we don't know what is going to happen. I can tell you, I know there have been meetings with the port people and the shippers, indicating to them that the prices will go up. Now, is that a new arrangement that GPH is making? And given that you already have the 2.5%, SLASPA was managing the port fairly well, keeping our prices at a certain level. The storage of containers is going to go up. If the ships have to pay more to come into port, all of that will be passed on to the end consumer. Okay, so we have to ask, what is GPH bringing to St. Lucia?
Well, unfortunately, our government, who is acting on our behalf, perhaps will tell you that is not your business. Because to date, they have not disclosed the details of the arrangement with GPH. We don't even know what is the government's plan and the scope for the development of our ports, let alone. However, it worries me when I hear some of what you said. Am I to believe that GPH will have full control over the port after having developed it? Will have full control in terms of determining what charges are receiving all the revenue? Because I look at our port as one of the sure sources of revenue for government. And if you have well, there's nothing guaranteed, but if you have what I can term as almost guaranteed source of revenue, I heard you mention that in the past, SLASPA received at least $10 million a year. And if an investment to improve the ports is going to only be $40 million, I see no reason why SLASPA cannot qualify with a revenue stream such as what they have currently to raise that money themselves and to develop the port themselves, because they're already into that business. However, I know your government is a strong advocate for foreign direct investment. So perhaps this government was also looking at it from an aspect of foreign investment. So they allowed instead the foreign investor to come in to do the project. Can you speak on that?
Well, I guess either one of us
Either one of you.
Yeah.
And then you can take over from there.
Yeah.
We have seen, Mr. Montoute, recurrence of this. So let's not forget the PPP proposed for HIA.
Yeah.
Right? Which again, United Workers' Party asked, what's the added value? Why would you bring somebody in, allow them to make $60 a head, right? Mm-hmm. Collect all of that money over a 30-year period of time for an investment of $100 million. So they were going to make $1 billion in revenue and $100 million at the time of an investment, right? WASCO. I remember when we came into government in 2006, the government had negotiated a deal where they were going to privatize WASCO. Mm-hmm. They were going to sell the assets of WASCO for $1. They were going to write off all of the debt of WASCO, and the new entity was going to be allowed to increase the prices to whatever they had to be. And we said, well, if you're going to do all those things, why don't you do that for WASCO? Right? Because WASCO is in debt or struggles because of the debt of the dam, which it's being asked to pay. And also, you cannot have a situation where electricity prices are going up and a major cost for WASCO is electricity, and then telling WASCO it has to sell the water at the same price before. Whereas with Lucelec, if you notice, that there's the fuel surcharge to cover that situation. And it seems that this government continuously finds itself in ways in which it is enamored, finds an appeal to bringing these entities in and giving them major state assets allowing them, and I'm going to use the word exploit our assets, and there's no accountability as to how they're going to spend the money.
Yes, but I mean, while I'm not here to make an argument for the government, but they can tell you that GPH, for example, is bringing in foreign capital.
So, and I want Guy to chime in, but
Well, I don't know the details.
yeah. So let me.
I'm
I
just
think
asking.
that the way to the Prime Minister today, when he was a leader of the opposition, said something. So I think that maybe if we look at the genesis of that, he said, the Prime Minister, meaning me at the time, does not seem to understand that foreign direct investment in a country means that a non-national or foreigner brings money into a country from overseas sources in order to invest in that country. Instead, the Prime Minister means that foreign direct investment means that he gives directly to a foreigner our lands, our beaches, and our money. So this is contradictory.
Okay,
So
but in this
GPH,
case, yes.
GPH, let's understand,
Right.
is coming in. The land currently is owned by the people of St. Lucia
That's correct.
through SLASPA. Okay? The revenue that's being generated on an annual basis is coming from the tourists that are coming in that are paying the head tax,
That's right.
which is ours. Yes?
Yes.
And GPH then is now turning around and going to fix up something and is going to borrow the money from the Bank of St. Lucia, which is owned by the government of St. Lucia and by shareholders from St. Lucia.
Okay, I will interrupt you here. I have to interrupt you here. You just read an excerpt from a document from the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, who said, and he was right, that foreign investment means that the investor is going to bring in the foreign currency. But you are saying to me that GPH is going to borrow the money from here?
Correct. And to make it worse, when you bring in a foreign investor, it's to do things that you cannot do.
Right.
Okay, so I think that the Cabot example is a very good example, right? Did the government have any entity that's responsible for the development of the hotel sector and a golf course? So here it is land that Ray has laid dormant for 60, 70 years.
And let's clarify a misconception that has been going on for a while. The lands at Cabot were private lands.
Correct.
They were not government-owned land.
Correct.
Private lands that were in receivership.
And that private lands that already had a Queen's Chain lease.
That's right.
Okay? So it was in receivership. Anybody could have gone and bought the Cabot lands. Bank of Nova Scotia decided that they wanted to pull out of St. Lucia and some of the other islands in the Caribbean, and therefore wanted to liquidate all their assets. So they had an asset because they took the property over in receivership. Did the government of St. Lucia have an entity that could have gone in and developed Cabot? Did we have an equivalent of SLASPA?
Okay, you had no institution that was in that business.
Nobody in that business,
Right,
okay?
okay.
And Cabot was promising to build a world-class golf course and real estate development. So the question was, had they done that before? The answer was yes. Okay, they had 2 golf courses that already were in the top 100 in the world. One of them in the top 10. Ben Crenshaw, world recognized, the development team that they had to go and do it. So they bought their own land. They borrowed money from NIC. NIC is in the business of making money. The way that NIC covers pension payments is by making sure that the money that they're getting, that they're earning a return on that. So here it is that they could have bought land in St. Lucia. The risk was minimal because even if the project went under, they would have acquired the 400 acres, which had a value of 90 million, and they were only lending 30 million. The government, the SLP, had a major problem with that. Okay?
Not just a problem, they had a major protest against Cabot.
So in the case of GPH, they're coming in to develop land that's already developed, that's already earning an income, that we already have an institution that does that exact same. So why is it that the government of St. Lucia would not have supported SLASPA to have borrowed the money from the Bank of St. Lucia, to have done the development, and then the returns on that investment by expanding the capacity of the port would have come down to both the Bank of St. Lucia and its shareholders, and to the people of St. Lucia, and been under our control. Why this thing where in the case of the airport that you were going to assign $60 per person? In the case of case of Wasco, you're going to sell all those assets for $1 and giving them full control and to turn around and make money and extract resources from our country, money that could be going into other projects or that it could have gone into continue the expansion of the air. In the case of GPH, that's what we kept on saying. What's the added value? Now, if in fact that they were going to go and develop the port in Vieux Fort and use their expertise to help us to make that work, right? And put all the capital investment into a port that didn't exist, that's a completely different story. But don't come and tell me that you're going to come and develop a port that already is existing, has its own revenue stream already in place. But that just seems to be the mode of operandi of this government. They look for easy ways, and I know later in the show we can discuss it. Why do we think that that's the case?
Okay, but before we go any further, we are just about the end of our first segment of the show. And we have heard basically who is GPH, and we have heard some of the interaction between GPH and our current government and so on. But you mentioned Port Castries, you mentioned Vieux Fort, but there was no mention of Soufrière. My understanding is that GPH is coming in, not solely to look at Castries, but also Soufrière. Now, in the second segment, we will want to delve a little into that aspect. And to assist us in doing so, I will be bringing on another colleague, Senator Herod Stanislaus, who is, of course, a senator, but also a former representative for Soufrière, who is from Soufrière, and we will want him to weigh in on the discussion, not only as it pertains to Castries, but also to Soufrière. So we are going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll further discuss the whole deal between the government of St. Lucia and GPH, and of course introduce the issue of Soufrière. Thank you.
Greetings, fellow St. Lucians. I regret that I am unable to attend and contribute to the House sitting on Tuesday, September 12, 2023, as I had pre-arranged to attend to some personal matters overseas. However, down for debate, amongst others, is the government seeking approval to borrow US $75 million, a little over EC $200 million, and that is to complete St. Jude's. I believe all right-thinking citizens would want this St. Jude's saga over and to have a proper functioning hospital in the south. St. Lucians have grown frustrated, angry, impatient, and have lost trust in both administrations on the progress of providing us with this modern-day health facility. Therefore, the issue to me is not about borrowing to complete a hospital, but whether the magnitude of funds borrowed are being applied in the best interests of users of our health facility. When the UWP government came into office in 2016, we recognized correspondence from the then PS in the Ministry of Economic Development to the then Prime Minister, Dr. Kenny Anthony, indicating that to complete St. Jude Hospital would cost in the region of EC $100 million. This figure did not factor the several problems and inadequacies already identified. The UWP government thought it necessary then to have a professional assessment done and contracted FDL Consult Inc. to provide a technical audit on the existing reconstruction project. The SLP government, on coming into power, chose to ignore this comprehensive 201-page report, but chose to focus on 2 lines. And I quote, "However, we do see a great value present in the works completed to date and believe the project is salvageable and could be converted in a facility that can properly serve the needs of St. Lucia." Unquote. Based on the figure of the loan before us, we can now better appreciate the cost of salvaging the project for the purpose intended. The UWP should feel vindicated, despite the number of times our concerns were downplayed with facetious, tongue-in-cheek comments that some chemical and buckets of paint was all that was needed to move into the facility. We will also remember the utterances by certain professionals that anywhere between $5 and $10 million would complete the works. For purposes of transparency, I wish to quote the entire paragraph the 2 lines were extracted from. And I quote, "Consistently, the design and planning of the building that make up this facility have been observed to omit adequate spaces for the running, but more importantly, accessing of services within the building. In hospitals, it is important that building services, equipment be accessible for maintenance without compromising the sanitary and functional roles of each unit as much as possible. The issues highlighted are significant in nature. However, we do see a great value present in the works completed to date and believe the project is salvageable and could be converted into a facility that can properly serve the needs of St. Lucia. As St. Jude's Hospital is designated a primary healthcare facility with one of its primary roles to ensure effective, acute, and referral services in the south of the island with future potential for growth and development. The visual component of the design does little for the potential that the history and nostalgia of the site dictates. More could be done to uplift the image and swell the hearts of all those that have contributed to a facility held in such high esteem by the people of St. Lucia." Unquote. The audit went further to highlight significant hazards including, but not limited to, health, fire, and there were several fire hazards quoted, and hurricane. Armed with this credible information, the then government of Honorable Alan Chasney decided it would be more prudent and money better spent to build a brand new, resilient, and futuristic structure, keeping with the 2007-2008 National Vision Plan aimed at creating St. Jude Hospital into a regional hospital complex and to develop and improve general health care and support services for the medical training schools expected to be attracted to the south of the island. St. Jude's Hospital, I believe, will be celebrating 57 years this month. The age of the structure was also factored in the expansion plans. I recall at one of our sittings under this administration, I indicated to the PM that the new structure does not belong to any party, and he would be praised for completing it. It would also make the hundreds of individuals, well-wishers, including students, who donated just over $2 million, extremely proud to be able to say, I was a part of this. Honorable Alan Chasney, I'm sure, will have a challenge in making his contribution come Tuesday because of the usual interruptions. But I'm putting it to St. Lucians to make your contributions on the future of our hospital in the south. Let us rise from the petty politics and speak to what we believe is better for our nation. Maybe the Prime Minister and his cabinet will listen. I thank you for listening to me, and may our sweet St. Lucia remain blessed. Good day.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. And in this second segment, let me welcome Senator Herod Stanislas, the former parliamentary representative for Soufrière and former Minister of Planning in the previous administration. But before I come to you, Senator Stanislas, I just want to continue with Honorable Alan Chasney, the former Prime Minister. You spoke of your government's plans for development, which included the ports, but of course, we are seeing what appears to be a diversion from the original plans that your administration had, so much so that we are in development plans for Port Castries and Soufrière to the exclusion of Vieux Fort. Can you speak a little about the overall plans that you had, and as far as how it affects Vieux Fort, the current plans that are being undertaken?
So, the viewers would be familiar with the term village tourism.
Right.
And we talked about increasing the output of per acre of land in St. Lucia. So looking at the businesses we had and how we could expand those businesses and grow, because that's how you're going to grow your economy. And we identified in our first term of building a new St. Lucia, Rodney Bay, Gros-Islet, Castries, Soufrière, and Vieux Fort. So you would be very familiar with Gros-Islet and the roads, the beach developments, opening up activities, help the growth of Airbnbs by creating beach parks. And some of the things that we were working on to expand those capacities. The T-Village, in terms of giving a proper place for vending, so that there was washrooms and easy for people to park and to expand the economic activity. In Castries, we've spoken a little bit today about some of the things, but what we wanted to do was to move the airport terminal at George Charles to the other side of the airport.
Right.
So to have expanded that area where the planes are currently parked, right? There used to be a place there for the agricultural storage center.
Right.
And we wanted to move the marine police to Banans. So again, so that land would have been made available. The whole Ganters Bay would have been part of the development. So when you arrived at the terminal, the airport terminal would have been on that side. It would have been married with the ferry, right? So you'd have had one terminal to deal with both airport arrivals and ferry arrivals, because it's a horrible experience that's taking place on the other side. So again, these were things about increasing the overall economic activity. Clearly, Banans was a critical part of what we wanted to do. Vieux Fort was driven in a large part by DSH, Pearl of the Caribbean. By putting the cruise ship terminal down there, we thought would brought economic activity that doesn't exist in the south. And while we were waiting for the hotels to be developed, that persons can get into the tourism business. There's a huge opportunity to develop more tours, which are almost exclusively owned by locals in that area. And persons who would be arriving in the south now, in a half an hour's time, they would be in Soufrière. But it means that places like Labrie and Choiseul and the two Micous that are not getting any of the cruise ship business now all of a sudden would be introduced to tourism by way of that business. And clearly what we were doing with the DSH. There's no better place to speak to the plans that we had for Soufrière. Soufrière was a very systematic plan of developing the waterfront, and also the economic activities in the town itself. But I could never articulate them as Herod, because I knew he was probably even more passionate than I was about some of the things, the road infrastructure, the sewage infrastructure, the waterfront development, creating entrepreneurial activities in the area, because most of the people who went to Soufrière were staying at the high-end hotels. And that had been a problem for decades. And so the goal was to redevelop the Soufrière town and to make it a significant attraction itself, and the whole water taxis. So
okay, well, this is a good time to bring you in, Senator Stanislaus, to talk a little on the plans for Soufrière that your administration had, and to take a look at what obtains now and give us your sentiments about what obtains now. So you may begin, first of all, with what are the plans that your administration had for Soufrière?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and let me say a special evening to our viewers, particularly our viewers in the diaspora and persons at home. Interesting, and I think political leader, former Prime Minister, have articulated quite well what was the plan, what was the vision which we had for Soufrière to encompass the.
And by the way, I'm hoping, I doubt the current administration will want to come to this roundtable, but I'm hoping that they will avail themselves of some opportunity to say to St. Lucians what their plans and vision is, because we need to know from our government, where they're taking us. Right. But go ahead.
Yes,
Senator.
I hope so too. We wanted Soufrière to be what we call the Eden of the Caribbean, Mr. Moderator, because we saw the potential in Soufrière. Yeah. This is a constituency which had been underdeveloped for 20 years, under the leadership of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and we thought there was so much more that could have been done to improve the lives of the people of Soufrière. So we put up this comprehensive vision plan for Soufrière, Fons and Jacques, and we went into the infrastructural development of the constituency, which had been neglected for over 20 years. And it is very visible what we did with the Hummingbird Beach Park to start with. This is an area which was grossly underutilized. It was basically neglected. And we had several complaints from the key hotels in Soufrière, Sugar Beach and Chasney, with overcrowding on those beaches from cruise ship passengers. And we felt that Hummingbird Beach was an ideal location where you could have created this modern beach park facility where majority of those cruise passengers could have disembarked onto Hummingbird Beach and spend their time there and create that economic activity, that economic boom from Hummingbird Beach into the town of Soufrière. So hence the reason we designed and built Hummingbird Beach Park with the concessionaires there, so that the local people, young people, would have become entrepreneurs at that facility. We also continued with the plan for the Old Trafford, the bus terminal and the farmers market. And we also had 2 additional phases to complement the full development of that structure. And of course, we have some squatters on the waterfront at the old Trafford, whom we are going to be relocating and cleaning up that entire waterfront, that beach area, to create another small area for visitors and locals to recreate. We also had the plan of the waterfront. We were going to be building that boardwalk all the way from Barron's Drive down to Hummingbird Beach. The area by the Soufrière gas station, from the Soufrière gas station up to the Old Trafford, the market would have been pedestrianized, and this would have been lined up with cafeterias and bars and pizzerias, ice cream shops and so on, and just create a new vibe in the town on the waterfront. Part of the development was also for the roads at new development. If you do not know, we have quite a lot of Airbnb places at new development in Soufrière, and these are roads that was basically neglected for over 40 years with the excuse that the land was privately owned and government couldn't have done anything about it. So we went in there, and within 2 years in government, we were able to undertake the complete rehabilitation of over 70% of the roads at new development. Again, to add value to people's properties, to create the access, the networking for visitors, for locals from new development into the town and surroundings. We also went further to expand the attractions and the availability of value added to the tourism sector by clearing a major landslide which we had at Fons and Jacques in the rainforest, to the Ambasso rainforest, Ambasso waterfall on the rainforest trail. Again, this landslide took place during Hurricane Thomas in 2010, and it had to take us in 2017-18 to clear this landslide, to create the access so that additional tourists and tour guides and so on could have accessed this area. Then we went over to Esperance Diamond. Again, this was an access road which had not been given any attention for over 50 years. The road was initially constructed 50 years ago, and nothing had been done to it. And it was actually the main access road into Fons and Jacques. And we felt that this area was an area which had a lot of potential for the residents of Fonsant-Jacques and Soufrière, families who own lands there and so on. You have, you have hot water springs and all of that in this area. And we undertook, as part of the road rehabilitation project, to rehabilitate the Esperance Diamond Road, again, to improve the infrastructure and to create the linkages from the town to the rural part of the constituency and so on. And there were several other interventions which were done in terms of youth development, sporting development, agricultural feeder roads, and all of that to mesh with the tourism development, the vision plan to actually make Soufrière the Eden of the Caribbean and the breadbasket of St. Lucia that it is known for.
Okay, very impressive. I must say, I think that's where it always starts, that a politician and a political organization, a government, have some plan, has some vision. But more than that, where I will give you credit is, well, it is easy, well, maybe not as easy as I think, because our current government does not have a plan, has not articulated a vision. But it is all well and good to articulate a plan and a vision and see no movement in terms of implementation. I give you full credit that actually we saw work had begun with the establishment of Hummingbird Beach and some of the areas you talked about, the road infrastructure and the sporting facilities and all of that. So you were well on your way. Unfortunately, that development was interrupted. But fast forward to today. We have a new administration, we have a new parliamentary representative, and of course, it is her responsibility now to take on the development. As they say, government continues, and we are supposed to build on what we find. Are you prepared to share with me the secret of the future of Soufrière as far as development is concerned?
Very, very good question, Mr. Moderator, and it leads us back to the GPH fiasco, which is taking place right now in the country. And I believe that it is really an indictment on the current parliamentary representative of Soufrière Fonsant-Jacques, Honorable Emma Hippolyte, to publicly acknowledge that she had a secret date, she had a secret meeting, and she had a secret deal made on behalf of the people of Soufrière Fonsant-Jacques. And up to this day, nobody knows what this deal, this agreement entails.
And if I can interrupt you here, perhaps we need to begin to accept that it's a government policy, that what happens in this country, whether it's on your behalf or not, is not your business.
It's not your business.
But I am still asking the question because I do not share that view. So, do we know? I mean, we started talking about GPH, which leads us to ports. You have a port in Soufrière. Do you know what the current plans are for the port in Soufrière?
I know nothing at all, and the people of Soufrière knows nothing about the deal, the arrangement with GPH. And there are so many persons, so many entities involved in this whole waterfront area in Soufrière who are going to be severely impacted, as far as I know, with this deal. And the government refused to come forward and be transparent and tell the people of Soufrière Fonsant-Jacques what is in it for them.
Okay,
for example,
before you move on, I want to know, I mean, whether you in Soufrière like it or not, your port is going to belong to GPH for the next 30 to 40 years. What implication is there for Soufrière? Whether your organizations, your people, your entrepreneurs, what implications can you see for them?
Very, very negative implications. For starters, Mr. Moderator, you have currently a lot of water taxi operators in Soufrière, speedboat operators in Soufrière. And currently, when they disembark onto the jetties, which is more the smaller jetty next to the police station, they've got an arrangement with the Soufrière Foundation where those guys, they only pay $2 US per person to disembark. And this deal with GPH, we do not know what the charges are going to be. Is it going to remain at $2? Is it going to be increased? Will they even be allowed to disembark onto the jetties from what we've seen? You also have the situation at Barons Drive. Nobody have said what is going to be in it for the people of Barons Drive. Are they going to be relocated? Are they going to be part of the development? Are the houses, some of the houses in Barons Drive going to be repaired, and there's going to be mixed-use development to be part of the whole process? Nobody knows. And you know very well that Between 1997 and 2001, the Labour Party had earmarked the Crestland area to relocate the people of Barons Drive. And it was when we came into office, we said, no, Barons Drive, the people have been living there for decades. This is where they earn their living as fishermen, water taxi operators, yacht guides, and so on. And they ought to be able to live and blend and, in this area and sustain their livelihoods.
Yeah. Crestlands is where?
That is on the way to Fort St. Jacques. This is where...
So you're taking people who are living on the water, sending them up into the hills, and if I'm not mistaken, when we had Hurricane Thomas was badly affected. So it already has a very bad reputation where people feel unsecure and insecure. So here's a person whose livelihood is speedboat.
Yes.
It used to be fishing.
Water-based, yeah.
Okay, water-based. And you're going to send them all the way up to Crestlands. Right? But I agree with you. The question is, are there people from Quendolands being relocated again?
Well, the thing is, given the secrecy that your constituency is now under cloud of secrecy, it's under with the current parliamentary representative, we do not know. Unfortunately for you in Soufrière, that decision might be determined by a foreign company, GPH.
That's right.
Now, if you are the parliamentary rep, or anybody for that matter is a parliamentary rep, and the people are not happy with the decision that is taken, they appeal to their parliamentary rep who goes to the cabinet, goes to the parliament, make representation on their part. And I suspect, Herod, as a young politician, even if it's because you want to salvage your political future, you will take heed to the cries of the people. I am saying to you now, GPH does not owe anybody in Soufrière anything. And you have no jurisdiction, no powers, no authority over that private company who can make that decision on their own. Soufrière, I hope you are listening. That is what is looming over you. And that applies to Castries. Because I heard you say, you talked about the loss, potential displacement of some of your operators and the possible increase in prices, fees, and so on. Because it is GPH that is going to be regulating. They are the operators and managers of the facility for the next 30 years, 30 to 40 years. That applies to Castries as well. So if you can just continue to wrap up, I just wanted to highlight that issue.
Yes.
Maybe if I can ask you a question. So there are two things that, I'm confused at because I've not heard any issues. I know that Soufrière Development Foundation, as an example, you just mentioned it, runs the dock.
The docks, yeah.
And they get fees for the tours. So the question is, have you heard as to who is going to be responsible? So is the revenue that's being generated from those docks also going to go to GPH? And therefore, to your point, is there going to be new fees? And then the other question is, the young guys who have their boats and who go and collect the passengers up at Point Seraphine, have they been told yet as to whether they're going to have a license and they pay a fee to be able to collect the people up there? Because my understanding is the GPH will control the taxi drivers, will control all the tours. Everything is going to be controlled. Have you been told or you have any idea as to what's going to be taking place?
Very good questions, political leader. Absolutely nothing is forthcoming from the government, from the parliamentary rep, neither the Soufrière Foundation. And you're very right that the Soufrière Foundation basically manages the docks. And you have several persons employed as dock masters, as wardens, cashiers, security officers on those two docks. So nobody knows what is going to happen to those individuals when GPH comes in for the 40-year management of Port Soufrière.
So our government of transparency and accountability is not revealing what the position is and is not accounting to the people.
To the people of Soufrière.
Exactly what it is they're taking them into.
But also, Mr. Moderator, Soufrière Foundation annually generates over $300,000 in revenue from the docks. And these are monies that are used for the social and economic benefit of the town of Soufrière and, of course, Fort St. Jacques by extension. So what happens to that revenue? Is GPH going to reinvest these monies into the town to support sports?
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint
you. The cultural aspect of the development of the town.
Make the decision, because right now it's the Soufrière Development Foundation board.
That's right.
Right? Which has predominantly been only people from Soufrière. making those decisions.
Decisions.
Now that money potentially could be with GPH,
With GPH.
and whether in fact GPH and who's going to make the decision. Maybe that's where the secret deal came
The
in.
secret deal came from. Yes, and I mean, nothing has been said to the boat operators, which politically articulated, coming from Point Seraphin or Rodney Bay, in terms of licensing and fees and so on. So people are in limbo. People do not know what is happening. All we know that a secret deal was made, and nothing has come out of that secret deal.
Well, you see, it's hard to believe what I'm hearing here now. We're talking about a St. Lucia Labour Party who so strongly advocate about, so much so that I thought at one time they were anti-foreign investment. Because it's all about, the foreigner taking over our country, protecting our patrimony. Where has all of that gone? What has happened to all of that rhetoric? When you're in opposition, you're singing the song to the extent that you put foreign investment in jeopardy. Today, you are going overboard to literally hand over assets, revenue-generating assets of St. Lucia into the hands of a foreign entity without any disclosure to St. Lucians as to what exactly the arrangement or the deal is. That is unacceptable, St. Lucia. You cannot accept that from a government that says that they're representing you and acting on your behalf. That is grossly inappropriate, and St. Lucians, you must take heed of this, because after GPH, what next? Anyway, let's get back to the discussion that we're having now.
Yes.
Because, I see danger. I see danger to the extent that we are literally selling our country to foreigners. And, the prime assets of our country, our ports. I just heard you say that the Soufrière Development Foundation is generating over $300,000
In dock fees.
when I was a parliamentary representative, how envious I was of that. You know.
I know.
Because I could just imagine, as a rep, what I could do with that kind of revenue being generated right there.
Yeah.
Not, we don't even have to face central government.
Right.
And you indicated, quite rightly, that you, the people of Soufrière, because your board was strictly Soufriérians, you, the people from Soufrière, determined how that money was spent, whether it's in social activities, scholarships, infrastructural development, and what have you. And now all of that is in jeopardy.
Yep.
We do not even know where we stand as far as that is concerned.
Yeah. And there is more, Mr. Moderator. If you look at the fishermen, Soufrière, this waterfront there in Soufrière is a fishing priority area. So from the big jetty going all the way down to Hummingbird is fishing priority. This is where the fishermen, they cast their nets and so on. What is going to become of this fishing priority area? Also in the Barons Drive area, there are several buoys which are placed there by the SMMA. The SMMA owns and manages those buoys, so when the yachts come in and they anchor there, they pay a daily fee. What happens with the revenue from those buoys to the SMMA? So this is very complicated. Also,
I'm very familiar with this because this is something Grosile was looking to emulate in the waterfront in the bay.
Right.
But then again, with all the secret deals that are taking place, we do not know what secret deals and deal is in the pipeline for Grosile. So St. Lucians, Viewfort, I think, has an idea. And I want to come to you in a while, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, to speak on that issue about Viewfort, because as you are developing the point on what is happening in Soufrière, it is no question in my mind that GPH, and quite rightly so, as a private entity, a business enterprise, are in the business of profit making. Hence the kind of negotiations they engaged in, hence the kind of stipulations they put in place. And so, as you finish, I want to go over to you, sir, to tell us what is the implication of the restrictions that has been placed on Port Viewfort.
I was saying, even when you look at the fancy drawings they've presented of the development, it entails the Hummingbird Beach Park. So what is going to become of the current concessionaires we have at Hummingbird Beach Park? Are they going to be relocated? Are they going to be removed from the area totally? Are they going to be bringing some high-end retailers and other persons at the Hummingbird Beach Park? You also see the drawing, there's some kind of amphitheater in the Old Trafford area. What is going to happen to the market? What is going to take place there? No
You
answers.
are asking some pertinent questions.
Nothing.
The answer to your question is you are at the mercy of GPH, a foreign entity. That is the answer.
I want
Yes.
to say very, very importantly that the concept of village tourism was a concept to allow tourist, commercial activity, and residences to coexist. So you cannot look at a place like Soufrière in isolation of the whole town. You can't just focus on the waterfront. The goal was to bring water taxis into Soufrière so that people that were staying as far as Tikai, maybe even as Castries, could come down for in the afternoon and go to restaurants. That's why the emphasis of the square in making it so authentic. The development of the sporting facilities and the enhancement of the Pralet and making it a bigger part. Look, the Eden of the Caribbean was also the volcano, which started off as a drive-in volcano. We're the ones who went in and created the mud baths, and it grew. And then was to now learn from the experiences of Sugar Beach that had taken hot water and built those Amerindian huts. And the goal was to now actually put a proper spa, world-class spa in there so that now you're adding more value. So instead of people just vending, that they also could be having massage and they'd be earning a lot more money, and it becomes a marquee attraction. Nobody else in the Caribbean would offer that kind of overall experience. Soufrière is so unique because it's so rich. It was to take Soufrière Development Foundation and take a component of it to develop attractions. And so that the experiences that they learned in Soufrière could go to Canneries, could now go to Choiseul, could go to Labrie, could even go over to Micoud in helping develop attractions. So Soufrière was bigger than just a waterfront, and what I'm just seeing is a waterfront. Sadly, to your question, in the case of Vieux Fort, where there was a holistic plan, we see the antagonistic relationship that the government seems to have with DSH. You want to cast all kinds of aspersions on persons. How is it you don't know that the DSH is going to sue you? You prevent the people from proceeding, and you made the allegation when you were in opposition that the DSH was using CIP money, was not using their money. You've been in office now for 2.5 years. Where's the evidence of that? And so let me reiterate for everybody. DSH came up with a vision plan, spent the money on all the designs, and built the horse racing track with their own money. And if in fact they're going to terminate the relationship with DSH, which is they're entitled to do, DSH is going to want compensation for what they've invested, because they've made that investment on the basis that they would get a return. And that's why signing of the vision, what you call it, the agreement that we had with them, the framework agreement, was a approval in principle, meaning that we said, yes, we like these ideas that you're coming up with. Now, a critical component of it is the Il Pirata piece of land and how you're going to develop that. So putting your cruise ship terminal in that location was ideal, because if Vieux Fort is going to grow, the cargo area is going to become congested. So you don't want to go and put both cruise ship passengers and cargo passengers over there. A lot of money was spent in designing that. So when GPH is doing this deal, and we've said it repeatedly, that Vieux Fort's not included, nobody has said anything differently. When they did the signing, nobody from Vieux Fort was there. We've seen no plans for Vieux Fort. Right? It's almost like Vieux Fort has become the forgotten part of St. Lucia. I'm worried.
Well, there are always leaks in every secret. I mean, my understanding is that it is forbidden that any development be undertaken in Vieux Fort for the next 40 years.
And that makes sense, because when we were in discussions with GPH did not want to do the Vieux Fort deal, because the Vieux Fort deal would diversify or dilute the revenue from Castries. So if you can put $40 million into Castries, get all the ships coming into Castries, then you're guaranteed a greater level of return. And you were making the point. That's the difference with a development agency. When a SLASPA is going in, they don't need to look to exploit, maximize their return, because the return also comes in the development of the country.
That's right.
So building in the south, in Vieux Fort, the cruise ship terminal, helps support Castries. Because Castries cannot do home porting. Viewfort can. So you're bringing a whole new market to the table. If you have any incident, like when we had Hurricane Thomas and we got isolated, right?
Right.
People complained we have 2 airports, but it turned out really good that we have 2 airports. Right? When we have 2 cargo ports, so now having 2 cruise ship ports in St. Lucia, I think becomes a significant asset for us, and I'm very concerned, to your point. And I agree with your sense of urgency. This is a disaster of a deal. The government has not properly explained it. In fact, they've told us to our face it's not our business. And they've also told us to our face that it's a secret.
Yeah.
Right? Which is in contravention of anything that a government is supposed to do in a democracy.
And if I may add, Mr. Moderator, with Soufrière, all the developments which we were undertaking in Soufrière, with the waterfront and all the infrastructural, these were coming from grant monies. These were not borrowed monies, and all of the infrastructure would have remained in the hands of an entity, a government entity, the Soufrière Foundation. It was not going to be owned by any foreigner for 40 years. So that is very, very important to note as well.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Harold, for shedding some light on the Soufrière end of this GPH deal. And we are coming to the end of this second segment. And when we go into the last segment, I'm going to bring back the former Economic Minister, Guy Joseph, to join you, former Prime Minister, former Minister of Finance, to look at the current situation that we are in now, to make an assessment, a final assessment of it, and to tell us what the implications of this is. And I would hope too that you would suggest what the government could have done better, what the government could have done differently, quite apart from divulging to the people what it is that they're doing on their behalf that is their business. So, thank you very much, Harold, for your input. And when we come back, like I said, we'll be bringing former Economic Minister back on board. Thank you very much.
Philip J. Pierre says that all state funds should go into the consolidated fund. Here are some examples of Philip J. Pierre's hypocrisy. As we speak, work on the rehabilitation of the Millennium Highway is ongoing. This project is financed by the Caribbean Development Bank. CDB pays the contractor for the Millennium Highway directly. The funds do not go into the consolidated fund. Philip J. Pierre also happens to be the current chairman of CDB. Why aren't the funds going into the consolidated fund if the practice is so unusual as he makes it out to be? Funds from St. Lucia's Citizenship by Investment program also do not go into the consolidated fund. In 2022, the government of St. Lucia collected a whopping $51 million US from the Citizenship by Investment program. Not 1 cent was put into the consolidated fund. What have they done with all this money? Why isn't it going into the consolidated fund? The same contractor that Philip J. Pierre is accusing of facilitating corruption was just awarded a major contract for the new air traffic control tower at Huanora International Airport, and payments will go directly to their account in Panama. In other words, this means that money is not coming into the consolidated fund. Why would a prime minister deliberately spread propaganda and misinformation regarding a practice he follows himself? Why the hypocrisy? What is Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre trying to distract you from? We can't trust Pierre.
This levy will not be imposed on any food items. This means, Mr. Speaker, that the cost of food should not change because of the levy.
Welcome back, viewers, and welcome back, Mr. Guy Joseph, as we continue our discussion on the implications of the GPH deal on St. Lucia as a whole. Gentlemen, we were made to understand during this discussion what GPH is all about. We discuss what we know of the deal that has been struck between the government and GPH as far as our ports being leased to GPH for 30 to 40 years, and we looked at some of the implications of that arrangement. We have already mentioned the fact that the government is not forthcoming with information. They have, like Honorable Alan Chastner indicated, told us straight that it is not our business. They have told us that it is a secret. They have made no bones about saying so to us. But we, knowing that it is our business, it can possibly have serious dire implications for us in the long term. We have to insist on getting the information, the requisite information on what exactly that our government has tied us to, and how it is that they are going to allow a foreign entity, namely GPH, to exploit the resources of this country that could have otherwise redound to the greater benefit of St. Lucians had it been in the control of either government or quasi-government entities, such as SLASPA. With SLASPA, there is some government control, there are the regulations that have to take place, there are certain standard procedures, for example, competitive bidding for contracts and so on. But you cannot dictate to a private entity how to go about their business. And that is where St. Lucians, our assets, our patrimony, being put in the hands of foreigners, will be dealt with in a manner where we have to be bystanders with no say. Whether we like what they do or not, we will have to accept it. Now is the time to take those considerations seriously and to ask yourself whether you will allow your government to further thrust you into that kind of situation. If you are as concerned as I am about this GPH deal, all is not lost. There is a protest that is taking place on the 30th of November in Castries. There are many issues that St. Lucians will be coming out to protest against. This is one of them that you can let your voice be heard about. As we go into our third segment, we just want to thrash out, gentlemen, all the issues pertaining to and surrounding this matter. You all are in a better position than the average St. Lucian to have an understanding and to enlighten us. I will start with you, former Prime Minister, former Minister of Finance. What are the implications of what has happened so far, and what are the consequences for St. Lucian?
I don't know. I know, Guy, you had something that you wanted to say. Maybe I should let you, if you don't mind, Mr.
Okay, well, yes, Guy.
Yeah. So initially you had asked about the foreign direct investment. I do not really consider what GPH is doing there the type of foreign direct investment that is required in St. Lucia at this point in time.
Hold on. So, before I will not allow you to go further, before you tell me, so what kind of foreign direct investment you want to see in St. Lucia?
So, let me use DSH as an example. When Theo Hakim came to St. Lucia, he had certain proposals that we sat down, we looked at it. We looked at a dormant piece of land, a land that had not generated any economic activity for St. Lucia. There were just a few cows in that area. The land had not been generating agricultural produce as such. There were no houses. There was no economic activity in the area. Theo Hakim went into an arrangement to develop that land, virgin land, to be able to make it a tourist attraction, something that would bring much investment into St. Lucia in terms of people traveling here, horse racing, develop a brand new industry that we've not had. And I know we've had basic horse racing, but not the type of horse racing that captures international attention. That I call a foreign direct investment. Developing a port in Viewfort, a cruise port, because you already have a cargo port, I would consider a direct foreign investment. But presently we have over 1 million tourists landing in Port Castries every year during the cruise season. So what is GPH? GPH is coming and take a ready-made business. We already have the passengers coming in. We already have the cruise ships coming in. We already have a deep water harbor that can accommodate the ships. We just expanded Point Seraphine, the northern wharf, to be able to accommodate the quantum size vessels. So what is it that GPH is bringing? SLASPA has shown that it is more than capable, and SLASPA has always been managed in full by St. Lucians at every level. So when we talk about a foreign direct investment coming into St. Lucia, I do not see GPH as a foreign direct investor. And I know that is why my Prime Minister at the time, Alan Chasney, did not go into that arrangement, because there was no added value. For that matter, we saw them taken from us. And as you indicated, every investor comes to invest to make returns. But we are giving a ready-made business, just like they were doing with Wasco. The airport, where you are making $100 US on every passenger that lands at the airport, you want to take $60 of that 100 and give it to an investor where $30 can pay the level of investment that is being made at the airport. I mean, who does that? So
before you go further, let's make it clear. So you're saying what we are discussing here is not an investment. In a sense, we can call it a divestment,
yes,
a political one, where, you know, we took what we had and divested it, and that divestiture to a foreign company.
Because it is clear SLASPA has never defaulted on a payment. And every year the government gets millions of dollars given back to it by SLASPA.
Now, folks, I just want to say to you, I've been in government. That is a rare occurrence. Most government institutions, government entities operate at a loss. I'm hearing now that one of the few that operates at a profit, that generates revenue, has been divested to a foreign entity.
So
that's what you just said.
So, Mr. Montut,
Yeah.
This is a call for all of us in St. Lucia. 40 years is a generation according to the Bible. 40 years is an entire generation we're talking about. We are giving up at minimum 400 million US dollars.
Mind-boggling.
And this will have long-term implications for healthcare, for education, for travel to St. Lucia, for maintenance of our roads, because we just know that part of what GPH arrangement is from what we've heard. But what are the fine details? And I know I cannot trust this government to negotiate deals. Look at what happened with Grindberg. We are still in court today. We're trying to get our seabed reassigned to St. Lucia. So when I look at the arrangements we've seen in the past, and St. Lucians, I most likely will not be here 40 years from now. I don't think you would be, Minister.
Well, I was hoping to it.
I mean, what is going to happen to St. Lucia? Because when you give that away, you have no control of your ports. You have not built a new cargo port. Suppose GPH says, I have 2 cruise ships coming in. The ship bringing in cargo has to stay out there and wait until these cruise ships have left. Who is paying the additional cost? Because this is a profit-driven entity. SLASPA is considerate. I will give you an example. When a certain cruise ship said they were pulling out of St. Lucia, and then Minister of Tourism and myself, we flew to Miami the following day, and they said the decision is made. We were at the door. What are you all doing here? Nobody invited you all here. We said, the Minister of Tourism, then Alan Chasney, said, we need to meet with you. And we were able to go in there and we were able to negotiate. And because we had the leverage to negotiate ourselves, we were able to save that ship that made 52 calls a year into St. Lucia. bringing over 300,000 passengers per year into St. Lucia.
As you
When
speak.
you remove that and you put that in the hands of a private entity, all they are doing is focusing on their profit, not on the benefit to the country.
As you speak, Guy, yes, go ahead.
It's
Yes.
made worse because now they're borrowing the money from the Bank of St. Lucia.
Right.
They don't own the land to begin with, so they have absolutely nothing to risk
Right.
other than the loss of revenue.
So as Guy was speaking, I was just thinking, here is the party, St. Lucia Labour Party, who's fond of speaking of colonization. And they have cleverly found a new form of colonization for St. Lucia, to return St. Lucia to a colony. Because when you give up your port,
And both they're looking at giving up, the airport and the seaport.
and these are assets that you want to keep under national control. Your major utilities, and they were prepared to give up Wasco. Then you have little or no control over your country.
They were prepared to give up Lucilec too. And I can tell you that I was minister. And there's a company from Canada, Emera, that's a major shareholder in Lucilec. They wanted to set a coal plant in St. Lucia using coals. And they were using the area by the airport to store the coals. I mean, the things that this UWP government has had to stop in this country. Now, Emera was making a $500 million investment into the electricity company, which would give them what? Controlling shares.
Right.
When we came into government, we said these things cannot be allowed to happen. So Labour Party has been on a rampage to sell out as many assets in this country as possible so that government would not have responsibilities. So
And
if you
you know-
don't control water, you don't control electricity, you don't control your airport, you don't control your seaport, what do we have left?
I would hate to think that this is being done out of malice or wickedness. I rather conclude that it is out of incompetence, inability to manage and run those entities, that they're just, freeing themselves of those assets and just letting someone come in and take control.
I think Emma gave us the answer, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Secret deals.
Secret deals.
And when we do the nexus between all the people who have been employed on GPH, and I want to say,
Oh,
I don't
yes.
want the Prime Minister, the future Prime Minister to say, I will say that we need to put GPH on notice that we in St. Lucia, we are not happy. And there are some ethical standards that international companies are supposed to abide by. And we believe that some of these ethical standards are being breached as we speak. Because if you come in to invest in a foreign country, I know it's not an investment, they're making a deal and a divestment.
Yeah.
They are making a deal that is a one-sided deal. All the benefits is to GPH, nothing for St. Lucia in this deal. And the people of St. Lucia, we need to tell GPH from now, we are not happy with you, we are not happy with what you are doing, and when the government changes, you will have problems in St. Lucia.
Okay, so let me just say this. We are looking at what obtains right now. The government has made a statement, first and foremost, that it has no confidence in locals. Because what the government should do is to empower and build on local assets and resources. I am suggesting that they could have built on the human resources of SLASPA by investing in them. You could build on the asset base of St. Lucia by letting SLASPA be responsible for that investment. But instead, they have, as we have said earlier, divested to a foreign company. And what has already begun happening? That foreign company has begun poaching on SLASPA, and it is my understanding that some top officials of SLASPA are already being drawn across to become part of GPH St. Lucia. Now, when that happens,
Three senior positions have resigned.
when that happens, you are
To move
weakening your
over.
institutions. while strengthening the entity that comes to exploit for profit. I think we have to rethink that approach. Our government has to seriously rethink that approach and take into consideration the interests of the country and the people. Gentlemen, we are at this juncture. What do you see on the horizon?
Look, I think that you've brought up a very, very interesting point. I've spoken about the nepotism, and I was very disappointed in Hilaire's answer to the claim of nepotism. I was very disappointed in his answer as to the merits of this deal. So first of all, in his press conference, he basically said that the gentleman who is the brother of the chairman of Invest St. Lucia, and who's also the deputy managing director of Bank of St. Lucia. So here it is, Invest St. Lucia is a party to the deal, Bank of St. Lucia is giving the loan, and the person who sits on both of those sides, his brother, is hired. And his answer to us is to say, oh, the brother's qualified. Now, one of the qualifications he spoke of was that the brother used to work at SLASPA. Right? So SLASPA already had that deal, that talent. You have another gentleman who was in charge of business development of SLASPA while the negotiations were taking place. And now he has been hired over to GPH. Okay? Then Lisa, who is the girlfriend of Baby and a very well-known Labour Party supporter, gets the contract, and she's a senator, gets the contract for communications. And then now Thaddeus Antoine, who is the lawyer for Ernest Hilaire, who is part of that family of circle of friends between the chairman of Invest St. Lucia, the chairman of CIP, and remember, he's also the chairman of the Tourism Authority, is the lawyer. Now, let's look at this for a moment. If you take an entity that is making money and you decide you're going to divest it, and you're putting it in control now of a private company that does not have to adhere to the governance laws that we have in our country. What do I mean by that? SLASPA must put these things out to tender. So by putting in the hands of a private sector and doing this sweetheart deal for GPH, GPH gets the sweetheart deal, GPH then turns around now and starts hiring all these Labour Party people. Let me call it what it is. It's nepotism. It's incestuous. Now, when the construction starts, Mr. Montoute, do we have any secrets that we believe as to who is going to get the jobs? So you're taking a state asset that's making money, a critical asset, handing it over to a private sector person for no reason, and that private sector person now has the authority, the ability legally to hire whoever they want to. And the first set of hirings that they have are all part of a clique. So this is a way of circumventing the laws of our country, circumventing transparency, circumventing accountability. And I want to go a step further than what Minister Joseph said. If we get back into government, I want GPH to understand one thing very clearly. This government will proceed to develop Vieux-Fort. Okay? Without a doubt, we're going to proceed.
Well,
and that there will be an investigation as to every... Now, I know that legally...
No, I have to interrupt you here because it's very likely that you will become the next Prime Minister of St. Lucia. And I want our listeners to understand what you're saying. And I don't want you to just be saying, making statements glibly that cannot hold. I mean, haven't this present government surrendered or compromised a measure of our sovereignty by signing a deal with GPH that we cannot develop the Vieux-Fort port for the next 30 to 40 years? How do you get around this?
Many ways to skin a cat. because at the end of the day, we're a sovereign country.
Okay.
And the one good thing I know about international law, so for instance, in the case of Barbados, because the contract was signed on the eve of election, remember, the similar thing happened here where the Labour Party signed a contract for Black Bay 3 days before the election. It brings questions into mind. To Minister Joseph's point, that when you have a deal that's so one-sided, you cannot prevent a country from developing its own assets. Okay. So I'm just saying to you that
I just want to let our viewers know that I will not accept for any of my panelists to just be making statements without basis, and we want to know that if you're not just saying that.
No,
that
and you brought up a very interesting point, and I want to really emphasize it. The march on November 30th is about saying no. Clearly, we need to say no to the GPH deal, right? We need to get the government to go back and renegotiate.
In that one deal, there are so many no's to be said.
Correct.
No to compromising our sovereignty. No to giving away one of our prime assets. No to jeopardizing the future of jobs of some of our entrepreneurs, like the boat owners in Soufrière, the taxi drivers, and all the vendors. I mean, there's a lot of no to be said there. Of course, I have a long list of no's for myself. The 2.5% is a no for me. I mean, St. Lucians have their list of no's, but I'm happy that you brought that up.
And we know that in the case of Antigua, when the deal was done originally, the cruise ship said no. And it caused them to have to go back and renegotiate. All right? We know that Barbados said no. And it's caused them to go back and renegotiate. They have not found a compromise position as yet. And I think that if our government is not going to say no for us, we need to remind the government, and whether I was in government or not, the people need to remind the government as to who gave them the authority. And this secret deal cannot stand. That's not part of the deal. You're not put into government to have secret deals.
I mean, I couldn't believe my ears when I heard a government minister admitting openly that what she had was a secret meeting and made a secret deal. I mean, can you believe it in a democracy?
And so, in his press conference, he refused to deal with the nepotism. Right? Talked about the qualifications, and I asked a question: why him? Is he the only person who's qualified? Did this go out to tender? You see, that's where I'm saying, if we knew it was SLASPA or a government semi-government agency, there are rules in which there's transparency. When it's a private company, we cannot call them to attention. So I'm very worried by his response, and he refused to deal with why we're doing this deal. The government still cannot articulate, other than speaking, as Guy said, to a foreign direct investment, which it's not foreign direct investment. You criticize Cabot. Cabot was an investment of raw land. They brought their own money to the table. They've shown us that they've built a world-class golf course that's ranked number 76 in the world. They're driving the real estate and development in that area. Windjammer Landing, Sandals, when you talk about the Club Med development in the south, these were all private sector investments, and you give up a certain amount of things. When we did the deal with DSH and we leased him the property, because there was nothing there, he took his money and he built the horse racing track, and he built a world-class horse racing track. How do we know that? The race that we had in 2019, 3 of the top horse racing syndicates of the world were here, and we were talking about putting St. Lucia on the map, and by gaming, that our races would be seen around the world, and people would be able to bet on them and to drive and to create business opportunities, professional opportunities for our young people. What this government is doing is exploiting critical assets of our state, which have significant revenue streams already to them, the airport and now the cruise ship port, Wasco, and giving the control to private sector companies, and those private sector companies are not required to be accountable to us to who they hire and who does the jobs. And we've already seen very early in the day that GPH is hiring all of the Labour Party hacks. And this is coming at the expense of the taxpayers of this country. This is coming at the expense of a significant asset. And for that reason, and we all have to come out on November 30th and to say no, and we must mean no. We already know that by us standing up on the citizenship program, the Prime Minister is already backtracking. But it took collective voices to say no, and that he knows that we mean no. This government does not have the ethics, does not have the integrity, doesn't have the moral fortitude to deserve the kind of authority that we're giving them. And that's what I'm concerned with.
Okay, so, Honorable Chasney, I realize that we're coming to the end. I don't know if you, unless you have any significant major point that you want to make towards the end, that can probably serve as your wrap-up. But, Guy, I want to give you an opportunity to, make your closing remarks.
Yes, I just want to be able to say to all of us in St. Lucia, if GPH could spend $250 million in Bahamas to own 49% of the port in Bahamas, if they could spend the cruise ship port, if they could spend $84 million in Antigua, why is it they're spending $40 million in St. Lucia, or $45 million, and own both Port Castries and Soufrière? That is the major question that we are confronted with. And I believe that as St. Lucians, our future is at stake, and we need to lend our collective voices and will together on the 30th of this month. I don't care whether you belong to a political party, whether you are aligned or non-aligned, whether you labor or you flambeau, it does not matter. I think what matters is the decisions that are being made on our behalf that we are not happy with. And I think we need to send our collective voices together to tell GPH we are not happy with what they are doing in St. Lucia, and that they need to go back to the drawing board. I believe it is our responsibility to do so, to send a very strong message. We usually talk about the youth and the children and the future. Well, we are mortgaging 40 years of the life of the baby who's born today. Will be 40 years before there's a semblance that we can take back control of our ports. And that is not acceptable. And for those who say that all political parties are the same, let me say I can categorically say no. UWP was building the airport ourselves and leaving it under the control of SLASPA. And we would save over $1 billion in the process. We were doing the port in Viewfort with the cruise lines under the control of SLASPA. We would save over 400 million US, which is another $1 billion plus EC dollars. So there's a clear distinction that this party, the United Workers' Party, believes in the capacity and the ability of St. Lucians to do world-class things, and we would put our confidence and our trust in our people. On the other hand, the Labour Party is just in the process of handing over St. Lucia to their selected foreign friends to control our resources.
Thank you, Guy. I will give you 2 minutes to wrap up, Honorable Chasney.
I think it's even getting more dangerous. Hilaire, in his response, basically said that our questions about this deal has more to do with us trying to tarnish the name of St. Lucia and the reputation of St. Lucia and prevent foreign investors from coming in this country. It was Kenny Anthony who said that he was going to write to foreign investors and tell them not to come here. It is Hilaire who said that on the CIP program that he would have reopened every single file. It is the Labour Party who said on Cabot that they would rescind a cabinet conclusion on the lease, which they did, which is unprecedented. Okay? And the manner in which they're running their countries, they're quickly developing a reputation where St. Lucia will be an unsavory place for people to come and invest. I'm proud of my track record. That when I was in opposition in 2011 to 2016, I participated actively to support the development of Harbor Club. I continue to encourage investors to come to this country. But it is the role of the opposition to hold this government accountable. And when this government will go to the extent of silencing my voice and Bradley's voice in the House, we saw it where I was denied to give a report on the budget. I was silenced, and they attempted to send me to the disciplinary committee. They tried to expel me from the House, suspend me from the House indefinitely, right? This government needs to understand that the country belongs to the people. They are there to provide a service to all of us, and they must be transparent. And what they're attempting to do here is a complete breach in the trust of the people of this country. The Prime Minister himself has lied repeatedly on issues. Hilaire has lied. Richard Frederick is allowed to run rampant and instill fear and intimidation against the citizens of this country. And I'm really saying to St. Lucians that November 30th is an opportunity for all of us, regardless of whether you are a supporter of United Workers' Party or not, whether you're independent, whether you're Labour. But I think we all collectively have to agree that this government has lost its way. It's time for us to say no to many of the atrocities that they're committing against our country, and for us to let them know that no means no. And the only way to do that is to come out in significant numbers. We're going to have both the march and a public meeting. Those persons who don't want to stay for the public meeting don't have to stay for the public meeting, but we're certainly asking that everyone come out and that we stand up to this government. And what has taken place with GPH is only one example of what they're doing to exploit and rape St. Lucia. That's what's taking place right now.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. Unfortunately, we cannot get answers from our government, but I am sure through our discussion on the subject of GPH and the port developments in Castries and Soufrière, that the public, the general public, has a better appreciation and understanding of what exactly is taking place. And I'm sure many of you are incensed right now, getting that clearer view of what actually your government is taking you into. If you feel incensed by what you have heard, let your voice be heard. Come out on the 30th of November and demonstrate your dissatisfaction and the fact that it is unacceptable. Let your government know where true power lies. It lies with the people. They are your servants and they're supposed to serve your interests. I want to invite all St. Lucians, as Guy indicated, you don't have to be a supporter of any party. But if you are a patriotic St. Lucian who is interested in the future and development of your country, come out and take a stand. I, for one, will be there. I invite you to come along and bring someone along. The people you know that are grumbling in a corner, silent, quietly, let them come out and take a stand. For it is the only way that change can be brought about. It is the only way that we can hold our government accountable and to ensure that they serve our purposes and not that of foreign entities. Before this program, I said that this deal with GPH does not serve the interests of St. Lucia. But now I realize it does not serve the interests of St. Lucia, but I suspect there are a few St. Lucians whose interests may be served. That is not the way we run a country. That is not what we are about as a people. So I call on you. I am putting out the SOS. So all St. Lucians, take a stand. Come out to save our St. Lucia. Thank you. And we look forward to you joining us again next Thursday on another episode of Roundtable. Thank you very much.